Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. We previously did a video on reassembling a Mark series. Did it in, I think it was 16 seconds. But most people still have difficulty with them, and a lot of it focuses around one part. There's a little toggle that hangs off of the hammer. You can see it right there if I can get the camera to focus. It's that black bar that hangs down across that silver pin. And the position you see it in is usually the cause of the problem. It gets behind that pin and gets hung up. And then once you've got the mainspring assembly in, you can't get it to go forward. So you end up having to start all over. Unfortunately, you can actually get the gun fully reassembled with it in that position. And what will happen is the bolt will be blocked. You won't be able to operate the bolt at all. And you pretty much have to take it all back apart. So that's really annoying. So I started with the gun field stripped. But I've also removed the grips, and depending on the grips you've got, maybe different sets of screws. This had like the wraparound hunter grip, but however your grips are set up, you remove your grips and field strip the gun. This on the main spring, this little groove here is where that toggle needs to sit, and changing one thing isn't going to make all of the fun parts of putting this gun back together go away, but this simple little part can actually sit and block the toggle from getting behind that pin. Basically, it forces the toggle to stay higher than the pin, so that when you go ahead and put the gun back together again and you tilt it forward, the pin has no choice but to drop into that slot. So I would say probably 80% of the issues people have with putting this gun back together can be solved with this simple piece. And it's easy to install. There's a pin. And let me get that flashlight and get the light on it again. Basically, all I'm going to do with the field strip gun is I'm going to push the hammer forward. And you'll see there's still a magazine in it because this one still has the magazine disconnect enabled. I'm going to push that pin out. And one thing you'll note, right there, there's a spring that goes behind it. And it's kind of hard to see. Everything's dark in there. But there's a spring that goes behind that pin. When I push the pin out, I need to make sure that I don't release that spring. So I'm going to push the pin almost all the way out, making sure that it sits on that spring still. And the part that I'm going to install has a little notch to leave room for not only the spring, but for the pin to not be all the way in. And it looks like it would be difficult to install this thing in there because it's actually about the exact thickness of that slot. But it's actually fairly easy. So the first thing I'm going to do is from the right hand side of the gun, I'm going to push the pin out, and it's important it's this pin, not that one. That pin right there. And depending on how long the gun's been around and conditions it's been in, sometimes that pin is not all that cooperative. But what I want to do is I'm going to take my hammer, line up on it, and just get it started. Now I deliberately left it sitting on the table instead of on an armorer's block so that the pin would hit the table and kind of give me a hint to stop. If I had it in an armorer's block, the pin would go all the way through and drop out, and then I'd be dealing with that spring. So at this point, I've got the pin. I can get a little more light in there, because of course it's difficult to see in there. I've got the pin almost all the way out. Need to back it off just a little bit more. Get a little bit of light in there. Let's change the angle on the flashlight and see if I can get it in there. You see, I'm going to back it off a little bit more. To right about there. Right about there. At this point, I got to be a little bit careful. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this thing with the groove facing up, because the whole goal is for this to go behind that pin. And I'm just going to drop it into the slot. And I'm going to make sure that it's laying face up. Just like that. This angle might actually work good. Then I'm going to take a pick and I'm going to drive it up, encouraging it forward until I get it up under that pin. And it's easier to do when you're looking straight at it than when you're trying to do it from the side. I'm going to turn it a little bit so I can do it. If it doesn't cooperate with you, tilt the gun forward a little bit to get the toggle out of the way. get some light on there and see if I've got it lined up right. That I went all the way back down to the bottom. So this can be a little bit of fun. There it goes. So I've got it lined up where that pin and the groove are lined up. A little bit, it's off by a little bit, but again, I'm going back and forth between turning it where I can look at it and doing it on the camera. But what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to line that groove up perfectly with the pin, and then with my finger I'm going to push the pin a little bit to capture it. And if I put a little tension on it and shift it around a little bit, there it goes. So now I've captured that plate, and notice that the toggle's in front of it. As long as I've got that plate captured and the toggle's in front of it, at this point all I need to do is push the pin, pound the pin back in. So I'm going to make sure it's lined up with the hole. It does have a tendency to want to drift out a little bit. So I'm going to push down on it with the punch and get it lined up with the hole. So now it's lined up with the hole. Turn it over. Give it a little smack with the hammer. And line it up. Now at this point, you can see that the toggle's sitting on that little plate. It's in front of the plate and it's above the pin. And now there is no way for that toggle to get locked on that pin no matter what I do with the hammer. So if I release the hammer, bring the hammer down, notice the toggle is sliding past the pin. And that is the magic to solving that one particular annoying issue. And at this point, I can put the hammer forward, put the mainspring back in, and oops, it does work a lot better, by the way, if you put the bolt in. But you can see now that it did line right up for me. Of course, had I put the bolt in like I was supposed to, the gun would actually work. And by the way, when you forget to put the bolt in, it's very, very easy to get the mainspring to go in because there's nothing interfering with it. So, get the hammer forward, bring the hammer down, slide the bolt in, spring up of course, get the hammer forward, line the mainspring up, drop it into place, and then put it back together. So that little bit of piece, and I'll put the price on the screen. I forgot to get the price of it before I started doing the video, but I forgot to get the price of it. But whatever it costs, this is worth it to make your Mark series much, much, much easier to put together. And note that this does not work on the 2245. This just works on the original Mark series. But it makes a huge difference in making it a lot easier. And it does say that it's only for the Mark III and the Mark II. This is a Mark I and it does work. But they're based in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida, HSS Corp. So if you like our videos, please give it a thumbs up, share, subscribe, check us out on Facebook and Patreon, and have a great day. Thank you.